Are you gonna it's like a network. Are you gonna walk down the street? You go, no, I go. I'm in the way. I just figured it's outside my car, so it's possible. Unsure. I mean, there's some really, but I mean, it's called the top. Yep, but I mean, I'm looking for to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Government.
Thank you for your service.
No, I was technically senate years ago, the chair of the equity committee. I guess that's not my second time. I was a student here, the graduate school. And what do you
Yeah, we were meeting, I go to the big 12. There's a lot, it's over, it's Friday, Saturday, Thursday, and Sunday, so
I had I'm confused.
Collaboration, just making sure the numbers were. Yeah. I don't remember. But I don't mind.
I've got 5:15. By my clock, so we're gonna go ahead and call this order. We'll start off with attendance. Jess, can you run through that?
I get you a gavel. Yeah. I have a couple of them. Give me one, so I borrow one. I can honestly just do it without, because I know who else here.
Okay,
Unless you want me to go through it, but.
that works. All right, well, let's move straight into our order of business. Let me pull up this here presentation.
No, I think we're happy to see you.
Okay. All right, no, I got it. Thank you so much. That's for you. You bet. I'll stand over here. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to come and visit a little bit about what we're doing in the College of Agriculture. I'm Dan Mosier, and I'm the Associate Dean. I'm not the Dean. I don't have the coolest mustache on this line. Dean Minton does. But he asked me to come because this is really kind of my wheelhouse, the part of the college that I work most closely with as Associate Dean for Academic Programs. So I work really from everything from student recruitment to alumni relations and everything in between, all the magic, whether that's coursework and curriculum or student activities, and a number of the ways that the student College of Agriculture fees are spent. And so he asked me to come kind of at his place to talk to you. But as we go through, I'm just going to review a little bit about the College of Agriculture. Some of you know it very well. Some of you may not know very much about the College of Agriculture, but we'll talk about each of the departments and how they use the fees that are allocated. If there's any point and any question at any time, please feel free to interrupt. If you're wondering, you're not the only one. As I used to tell my genetics students when I taught genetics over in Weber Hall years ago. So chime in and feel free. Agriculture, we're really bad about using acronyms and things that we know exactly what they mean and nobody else has the foggiest idea. So if I fall into that trap, please let me know. So first, the College of Agriculture fee is currently $22.90 per credit hour, and Ethan and I were just kind of reviewing. It was originally approved in 2014, so we've renewed this for several cycles now. The last time was in 2020, and I was brand new as Associate Dean. Of course, 2020, we did it on Zoom, of course, so it's great to be in person. It was adjusted to $22.90 in 2021 because of all the other changes that happened, particularly related to online coursework. And so prior to that time, if you were an on-campus student taking an online class, you paid a significant additional fee. And the university decided at that time to change to where the fee structure for online courses is only, it's not about online courses, it's about online students. And we do have a couple of fully online programs in the College of Agriculture. We have a fully online animal science program with almost, I think all of the options within animal science are available fully online, as well as a fully online food science program. So we have students in those programs, and they are paying a different fee and tuition structure, and they're the ones that are now paying the online fees. But there were a number of College of Agriculture students taking online classes previously and were paying that additional fee. And so to try to sort of even up the budget a little bit, the finance office adjusted the fee to $22.90. Now, when that comes to the college, it is a College of Agriculture fee, and it is assessed on all the courses that have College of Agriculture prefixes. It comes to the college, and then in our office, then we basically deal the funds out 80% to the individual departments. And that's based on the student credit hours that they generated in the previous year. And then 20% is held in the college office for college level sort of initiatives that Eamon and I work on. That does apply to both undergraduate courses, but of course graduate courses as well. And you'll see as we talk about how some of the fees are spent, some of them are definitely to benefit of graduate students, but graduate students are also paying those fees. And in fact, we have one department that does not have an undergraduate program. In plant pathology, when we talk about them, we do not have an undergraduate degree in the Department of Plant Pathology. Plant pathology is we have one of the best plant pathology, and plant pathology, and you probably don't even know what plant pathology is, plant diseases. So pathology relates to disease. And so the Department of Plant Pathology does research and teaching at the graduate level and has an undergraduate minor, or maybe a student that's in agronomy, which is crop and soil science, if you don't know what agronomy is. But if you're a horticulture student and agronomy student, you might get a minor in plant pathology. It's all about plant diseases and understanding the mechanisms and preventing plant diseases. We have no departmental fees. There's not an additional fee in any of our departments. We do have one course materials fee, which I think technically you also, or it's in your purview to approve. And that is the very popular Concepts of Floral Design class in horticulture. And that is open to all majors, and it fills every semester. And we have an excellent instructor and the reason you pay is because there is actual plant material. You are making floral arrangements in that class, and you take them home. So you have to have the materials to be able to, so that they buy cut flowers from greenhouses. Some of them we actually grow in our own greenhouses behind Throckmorton Hall, but there's a $220 fee in addition to the tuition and of course the $22.90 College of Agriculture per credit hour fee that you would pay. And that is strictly, it's a break-even cost to the horticulture department for the plant materials that they have to acquire for that class. Oh, I meant to point out also that College of Agriculture fee at $22.90, other than the College of Education, which doesn't have a fee, we have the lowest fee of any college at K-State. We are having internal discussions about potentially increasing that fee, and we'll talk more about that. That's another process. That was something that would be a year-long process that starts with the provost, would eventually find its way back to this committee and ultimately to the Board of Regents. But for now, we think we get a lot done with a reasonably modest fee. When I think about the way we use these fees, it really connects very well with where we're going in the future with the Next Gen strategic plan. And I called out a couple of things in the new plan, particularly in Imperative 3, about applied learning experiences. And really, when you think about how we spend the fee in the College of Agriculture, most heavily, we spend that on applied, hands-on learning experiences for our students with plants, with animals, with food, with environmental, trips and the teaching facilities north of campus, across the road from Kimball Avenue. There's an entire campus that we currently have, as our home, where there's all kinds of hands-on learning that happens there, and those things have cost to operate. And so these fees help us provide those kinds of experiences to, I would argue, a very, very high percentage of our students. It's really actually very unusual for a College of Agriculture student to not have some sort of a hands-on learning experience. We understand that's an imperative for the entire university, and we think that we've got some great examples of the impact that can have. And then the other, called out in the strategic plan, is I just flipped out this part about the student experience related to particularly resources that in each of our departments, we are heavily invested in faculty advising with very few exceptions in the College of Agriculture, but we also have student service professionals that are also available to support students 8 to 5 every day. And so if a student needs to see somebody right away and their faculty advisor happens to be in class at that time or is out of town on a research trip, there's a staff person there that is ready to serve them at any time during business hours, and they answer a lot of emails after hours too. So I'll be honest. And so that's also a place where we think that really aligns with the College of Agriculture student experience and the support that we provide. This fee helps us do that, and I think do it pretty well. I don't know if you can move that around just to get the headline, or I know the headline, but one of the points though is that we have some very high cost classes, okay? That a lot of our classes that do involve animals, they involve plants, they involve food products, they're involved, students in park management and wildlife and outdoor enterprise management. They're on trips, they're out spending time, they're something as close as Tuttle Creek Reservoir, or something as far away as trips they take to New Mexico, to multiple national parks, those sort of things. Those are what K-State's known for. And one of the things, quite honestly, we're very proud of. And I think what sets a K-State College of Agriculture graduate apart is those sorts of experiences. And our employers tell us that they like to hire K-State graduates because they come into the workforce very well prepared, not just with the theoretical elements of the things that we do, but the practical hands-on sorts of experiences that they gain from these sorts of activities. But keep in mind, the number of students that come into our college that have that already is fewer and fewer all the time. We have more students in our college from Johnson County than any other county in Kansas or elsewhere. We're no different than the rest of K-State. So we have a significant number of students that have career aspirations related to food systems and the environment, but have, maybe they're 2 generations away from some sort of food production system. Or maybe they just had a science class that they really enjoyed, and based on that, they have an interest in veterinary medicine. But they don't come to us with generations of agricultural experience. That's fine. That's our job. That's what we do. But to be able to do that, we need to have the facilities that we do have to be able to do that. So across, again, everything north of Kimball, a lot of that is involved in these various sorts of things. Our college is ranked consistently in the top 10, often in the top 5 colleges of agriculture nationally. And we recruit students nationally. If you include our distance programs, we have students from 49 states in the College of Agriculture. I'm not recruiting Maine very well. I need to maybe take a trip. This might be a good time of year to go up there. I don't know. But we have students from every other state that are enrolled in the College of Agriculture, either in Manhattan or in our distance programs at this current time.
Help screen, Caleb.
Yeah, maybe, click on the screen, there we go. We talked a little bit beforehand about the inflation, and that's, as students, you understand that very well because you know that pizza costs more than it used to, and to fill up your car with gas costs more than it used to. Books cost more than they used to, everything, your rent, your utility bills, all that sort of thing. The buying power of this fee is also eroded somewhat. And that's part of the reason we're having a conversation about what this might look like in the future. Again, that's not really for tonight's topic, but $20 in 2014, you know, that was getting down to $18 and change. And inflation was relatively low during that period, but in the last few years, it's actually been quite aggressive. And so the adjustment to 1995, that's when we went to the 2290. That's 1995 in 2014 dollars. And then, but you see what inflation has just done in the last couple of years. So our ability to send students on trips, our ability to support student service professionals, for example, is not what it was previously. I'm going to go through each of the departments in the College of Agriculture. I ask each of the department heads to update me on, because that 80% that they get of the 2290 that comes to them specifically. So I'll start with the Department of Agricultural Economics, where they have majors in ag-econ, as we would call it, or also agribusiness. That is a separate degree program. They invested a lot in people. They don't have farms per se. They do a lot of experiential learning with real-world data sets. We have an organization here on campus called the Kansas Farm Management Association, where they're doing real-world support with agricultural producers, Kansas and elsewhere. And some of those data sets come into classrooms for case studies. And so they're doing hands-on sorts of learning with, as opposed to with animals and plants. But some of the things that they've been able to do is, you know, trying to maintain a very favorable student-faculty ratio. And so they use some of these fees to add to teaching faculty, specifically teaching faculty. One is a faculty member that not only teaches some of the agri-marketing classes, but he also is the coach, if you will, of what's called the National Agri-Marketing Association, or what we call NAMA in the College of Agriculture. That's a student competition where these students compete at national events against teams from other universities, specifically in marketing of agricultural products. They basically function like an agency. They get a fictitious product and they develop the launch of this new fictitious agricultural product. They come up with a brand name, they come up with a marketing campaign, they have to come up with a budget for their launch of this new product, and they compete against other schools. And David Langman, who coaches that team and is partially supported by fees, has a background in, you know, we have a number of faculty members that bring real world experience to the classroom. I'm one of those people that worked in industry in between my academic times. David Langman would be another person that has that sort of experience. We also use graduate teaching assistants and help support them with student fees. For example, our very introductory agribusiness class that Dr. Berthold teaches, before we had this fee available, it was the typical 3 hours of lecture, 3 days a week for an hour. One of the things Dr. Berthold wanted to do was break it into 2 lectures, but then small groups. But we needed TAs to help with that. And the success of that class and then the student feedback has been really good, I think, since he's gone to that. The fee helps support the TAs that do the small group sections. We've renovated some graduate student offices. We've renovated some student lounge areas. We're not blessed with amazing infrastructure in the College of Agriculture, as Ethan and others have maybe heard a time or two before. I look forward to when this committee wants to meet in the Global Center for Food and Grain Innovation, because it's even nicer than this building, or at least that's nice as this. But I can see why you didn't want to meet in Waters Hall. That's okay. But there have been, Dr. Featherstone, the department head of Ag-Econ, I think has been very wise and very strategic in being able to upgrade some offices and spaces, some student lounge spaces, places where faculty and advisors are housed to make that more comfortable, more accessible for students. With each one of these, and this is, I don't know if this is required for the overall, for all student fees, but something we've always done, at least in the College of Agriculture, and it may be a requirement, is to engage with students in a regular basis, not just this committee every 3 years, but to consult with students in our departments. And sometimes that's student club leaders or whatever students in that. And so we ask each of our department heads each year to schedule a meeting with, you know, maybe case the leadership of that Econ Agribusiness Club. And just talk about, okay, these are the fees that came into that department, and here's how they were spent for his accountability, but also an opportunity to gain feedback. And so that's how, in this particular case, how we get student review there. Next department, communications and ag education is one department, again, 2 majors, students majoring in agricultural communications journalism, and students that are majoring in agricultural education that will ultimately become, many of them, high school agriculture teachers. And so in that program, in agricultural education, just like in the College of Education, there's a student teaching requirement. And so those students are going all over the state to do their student teaching the spring semester of their senior year. And our faculty are traveling to observe them. Our ag ed faculty put a lot of miles on traveling out to observe students doing their student teaching, as well as doing more virtual observation as well. But the students have travel expenses where they have, you know, sometimes students might get assigned their student teaching post in far southwest Kansas. And so they're going to have expenses. And so our department head, Dr. Ellis in communications and ag ed, has helped those students with come up with some of the costs for that, as well as to support the faculty travel that has to go out and do the observations. They do a number of sort of travel experiences that they help. They do a number of, they've done international study abroad trips. In fact, I think Dr. Ellis has one scheduled, I think, for Thanksgiving, if not over Christmas break. That's something that we take a lot of pride in the College of Agriculture. We want to continue to grow those international experiences. We're just now kind of getting back to whatever normal is in terms of having 3 or 4 faculty-led trips every academic year, and hope to grow that in the future. And we provide, either at the department level or when we get to the college slide, we provide funding at least $500 to every student that has an international experience. And for students that are doing semester long, we try to get them more on the order of $2,000. Some of that comes from foundation, from charitable giving. We have donors that it's close to their heart to support international travel, but we also use student fees to help pay for that as well, for those sort of experiences. And then all kinds of different technology. We have in our college, we have some of the university managed classrooms. We have a lot of departmental teaching space as well. And so sometimes these fees are used to upgrade technology in the departmental classroom spaces, student lab computers, and then in ag communications, no different than what you would have in a journalism program, the specialized software that they use for design and layout to be able to do that. And then they've also grown their numbers of teaching faculty by, nobody's on 100% on fees, but being able to have, you know, maybe by using student fees, we can have 3 instead of 2. And so we have 1 more person in the classroom to lower the number of students per faculty member. And again, there's 2 clubs, the Ag Education Club, and ACT is Agriculture Communicators of Tomorrow. That's the Ag Communications Club. And they review with Dr. Ellis. Department of Agronomy, or agronomy is crop and soil science, but agronomy, they've done some facilities upgrades in Throckmorton Hall. This is a picture of, you may not know the dynasty that is K-State Crops Judging, I mean, Bill Snyder doesn't have anything on Kevin Donnelly and now Rachel Biestra in terms of the success that they've had. I mean, literally, they've won the national championship more years than they haven't. It's a very successful program, and it's something that the K-State's known for. But one of the things they came to us and said, hey, could we use some student fees, because they have to learn all of these sample, you know, these seeds, and plant identification is a big part of that. And the storage, some of that has to be refrigerated, and the refrigeration actually failed. And we needed to upgrade that to be able to maintain the storage for the samples that they use in teaching, not just for that class, but other classes as well. Again, they're funding graduate teaching assistants for tutoring and to help with lab sections. We use motor pool some, but most of our departments also own vehicles because we're traveling so much. We are on the road all the time, running out to, sometimes it's just 2 miles out to what we call the North Farm, which is what you know is just north of the football field, but that particular area, but there's a lot of student activity out there. And sometimes we're loading up students in vans to go out there. And sometimes they're they're going on a field trip to, K-State has research locations all over the state. And those are teaching opportunities as well. And so transportation, departmental vans, all those sort of things. There's a lot happening right now in what we call precision agriculture, digital agriculture. And we're trying to get our students as exposed, but things become obsolete almost year by year. But the technology, the drones, the sensors, all the information, the cameras, all the digital information that's being collected to be able to really employ some of these precision ag techniques. That some of the places we want our students to have the technology that they're going to need to understand and be able to operate when they get out into to the industry. And then we have a student service position in agronomy and several teaching faculty that, faculty is more like 2/10 of their time is supported by student fees. Generally, they're on the state budget, tuition plus state support, but in some cases they have a 1/10 or 2 of their time supported with student fees. And again, Dr. Kosla works with the agronomy, Weed State Agronomy Club, just to check in and talk about how that's done to the extent. Animal science is an industry, which is the home of both the animal science major, but also the food science major is in there. More students major in animal science at K-State than any other major. We have close to 1,000 students in animal science alone. And we're one of the largest animal science programs in the nation. And they would have more than 50% of their students out of state in the Department of Animal Science. They're funding, again, graduate teaching assistants for both animal science and for food science. They have a teaching kind of a lab coordinator position because we teach a lot of hands-on animal labs. And so they have a coordinator position, a teaching associate that's funded there, and also an instructor that coaches some of the competition teams that's funded from student fees. Again, adding to that student experience, working very much on hands-on experiential learning. They've updated some technology in Weber Hall and Call Hall. And then the teaching farms, if you will. So again, north of Kimball, these aren't all the farms. These are just the ones that have heavy teaching use. We have, for example, a cattle feeding facility. It's largely a research facility, so we don't use student fees for that. That's used from research overhead on grants and contracts with industry and those sort of things. But the horse unit, we do a little horse research, but not very much. That is primarily a teaching facility, but it is an operational horse farm. We have a full-time manager, and then all the rest is student employees. And so that's probably something that I probably should have mentioned at the onset. A big part of this, particularly across all those departments, a lot of this is going into student pay. That we have hundreds of undergraduate students who are working part-time in all these departments. And so those fees are helping them, they're involved with, care of animals. They're involved with the greenhouses and care of plants and those sorts of things as well. So a lot of these dollars actually do come back to students. And then not only are they, making some money to help pay for college, but they're also gaining valuable experience in these areas. But the Sheep and Goat Center, the Dairy Center, the Crooked Beef Center, very heavy teaching involvement. Those are, classes are going out there. We're bringing animals into Weber Arena and the arena that will replace Weber Arena. We have a meats lab as well as a dairy processing facility. And again, there's a lot of teaching and a lot of cost with those that, because of all the things we do with these animals with students, it's not like it's just a regular farm that ought to make money. The time that we spend and the transportation we have, all the special things that we have to do for animals to make them available for teaching adds costs. And so to be able to support those and make them break even, the student fees help do that. But then because we have the student fees, we are able to have these facilities, and it really adds to the student experience. They get that kinds of hands-on experience that our industries expect. And again, there's actually in animal science, there's maybe 6, 7, 8 student organizations, but they sort of have a council of presidents that the department head checks in with. Department of Grain Science. Grain Science is one of the most unique programs anywhere, really the only department of its kind in the world, really. That you can earn degrees at K-State in the Grain Science department in bakery science, We have students that go become managers of large commercial bakeries. Not Dunkin' Donuts, think Sara Lee that makes, thousands of loaves of bread a day. That sort of thing, and those sort of very large scale baking operations. We have a major in feed and pet food science. Students that are going to work for the company that makes ions or any of the pet food, as well as animal feed, livestock feed, and companion animal feed both. And then a degree in milling, flour milling. Again, only place really like it in the world, and those students are in very high demand. We estimate 3 jobs for every graduate in that particular, and starting salaries are eye-opening. They are very high demand. And we have great partnerships with not just Kansas industries, but national and international companies that support it, because companies that are based in other countries still see K-State as their primary source of talent in those companies. But places where they have used these funds, again, we have instructors. We have 3 instructors that are partially funded by industry. We actually have, for example, the Institute of Milling. They actually partially fund an instructor at K-State because it's so important that we have well-trained milling graduates, but student fees help support those positions. All those 3 of those instructors all have industry experience. They have all worked in the baking, milling, or feed manufacturing industries for a period of time before they came back to K-State as faculty members. So, they know the theory, but they have practical hands-on experience, and they have industry connections, which I think is really helpful when we talk about placement as students. The bakery lab, if you've ever walked by Schellenberger Hall and seen the sign out, because, today's Wednesday afternoon and they have cookies available or that sort of thing, you should go in there sometime and peek your head. I mean, it is a large scale. Now, Schellenberger Hall is perhaps the worst building on campus. And Thompson might like a word, but it's in bad shape. And we have obviously a very great plan to replace that building. But until we're there, we have to keep it going. We have to keep the equipment going. We have to continue to have those student experiences with flour milling, with baking, with feed manufacturing, and that sort of thing. So a lot of it has been spent in upgrades, as well as the facilities out off campus. So just like we have a farm we operate, this is actually the feed mill. So this is a commercial scale facility where we can make livestock feed, and with the adjacent, what's we call BIVAP, they can make pet food. They have extrusion facilities. If you go out there on open house, they're making cheese puffs that are perfectly edible, inspected, everything like that. But it's the same process that you would make kibble, for example. But when a feed class is meeting in that operating lab, the tuition will pay the electrical bill, let alone all the other costs of the university. So having fees and having other support to make that happen, that's just something that we think about. But you can't get a career in that industry if you don't have that sort of experience, and that's why we have such great support from the industry as well. The Department of Horticulture and Natural Resources, that's where the floral design class is, but more importantly, a degree in horticulture, degree in park management and conservation, and a degree in wildlife and outdoor enterprise management. And so in those programs, they again use student fees to support GTA positions. Again, a lot of hands-on labs with plants and plant materials. The floral design instructor that teaches that class, her position is partially funded through fees. And again, upgrading technology. They are there's a real demand for growing distance education across all of our campus, but we particularly hear about horticulture, and not necessarily for degree-seeking students, but for folks that want to add more knowledge in sort of all different levels there. And so they're really thinking strategically about growing distance education offerings. And so the fees will help upgrade the technology and ultimately make that more successful. You may know behind Throckmorton Hall, very extensive greenhouses. And those, the equipment, a lot of teaching experiences there with plants, keeping those maintained and kept up to date. And again, they're using vans because just like agronomy and animal science, they have off-site locations. If you've ever been to the river pond behind the dam at Tuttle Creek Lake, you may not know that you drove back by there, what's called Willow Lake Farm, but that is a property that's actually not, I don't believe, owned by K-State. I believe it's owned by the state Parks Department, but they have access out there. And so they have tunnels out there and they're growing vegetables and those sort of things out there. But again, you got to get students out there. You can't walk there. The scooters won't make it that far. They get fence before they get halfway out there. And so, some students have transportation, some don't. And so we have to be able to transport them. And then they're doing undergraduate research all over the place. And so that's another place that they're doing those kinds of activities. Entomology. That's actually one of the newest majors at K-State. Entomology was one that for many years had only a graduate program. There was no undergraduate degree in entomology until, actually there was a long time ago, back way before I was a student at K-State, more of the time when my dad was a student at K-State. There was an entomology degree program. It got discontinued. They've always had a very strong master's degree and PhD program in entomology, and they have a minor in entomology, and they do a lot of undergraduate research. That they have dozens of students involved in undergraduate research. They created an undergraduate major that was just approved by KBOR a couple of years ago. We haven't had the first graduate yet. Looking forward to that maybe in another year. We'll have our first entomology graduate with their undergraduate degree. But when putting that undergraduate program in place, again, students in agronomy are going to take entomology classes. Students in horticulture are going to take entomology classes and understanding about crop protection and animal science students are going to take a livestock entomology class or animal health entomology class and learns about parasitology basically, because bugs are involved in everything outdoors in our food system. But they hired a new student service coordinator because with the undergraduate program, they're going to need the same kind of student support that our other departments have. And the fees help pay for that, not in its entirety, but part of that to be able to recruit a very good person to support entomology students. Again, they have graduate teaching assistants that help with those classes and teach lab sections. I mentioned all the undergraduate research they do, so they use a lot of those undergraduate students are presenting at meetings. And while we haven't gone completely to digital posters yet, we're getting in that direction, but they still do print some paper posters and need to be able to do that. Next spring at open house, if you haven't come into Waters Hall, come in and see what entomology does. I mean, they go all out. They have, I think last year they wanted 20 tables for open house. And they have microscopes, but they go all in. And it's, it's very, it's a great community service sort of thing, lots of little kids and that sort of thing, but they support that partially, some of the, not a lot of expense to it, but this expenses they do have that helps with that a little bit. Updating microscopes, updating projectors, graduate student travel, because again, graduate students are paying these fees as well. And again, the Pompano Entomology Club leadership meets with Dr. McCornack. Plant pathology, I mentioned before, plant diseases, does not have an undergraduate program. And there are a few plant pathology classes that an agronomy student or horticulture student might take, but largely they're teaching graduate classes for PhDs, but they're actually one of the top ranked plant pathology programs in the country, and actually one of the highest at K-State in terms of generating research dollars. They are an amazing research machine in the Department of Plant Pathology. But the limited fees that they get, because they don't teach a lot of credit hours, but they help support GTAs for these undergrad classes for horticulture and agronomy majors. They've upgraded furniture and computers, that sort of thing. And Dr. Cannelli meets with the Graduate Student Association because there isn't an undergraduate group there. And again, it's almost all graduate classes, graduate level classes. So that leaves my part, which is the academic programs office. So as I mentioned at the start, we keep 20% of the fee centrally, and then that's a pot that our team supports. For example, we have an event coordinator position that's funded on student fees. Mikey Hughes helps with the career fair. She helps with graduation ceremony. She helps with the honors reception that we have prior to commencement, the activities fair, the watermelon feed, if you will, that we have in the fall. She does the student newsletter so that when a company is coming for recruitment or there's some special event or something like that. So she does a lot of communications, and her position is funded through student fees. If we didn't have the student fees, we wouldn't be able to keep that position. The budget doesn't allow for it otherwise. I mentioned before study abroad programs, and this has been a reservoir of funds where we make the commitment. If a faculty member comes to me and says, hey, I want to take a group of students to Ireland, or I want to take a group of students to China, or whatever, you know, I always say we'll provide at least $500 per student to fund. And oftentimes we try to do more. But one of the places that I find the money to provide that support is in this pot of student fees that comes to the college. We fund GTAs in departments if the departments aren't able to fund them with their fee dollars, but sometimes, particularly animal science is one, where because they have such high enrollment that they need some help sometimes to fill some of those gaps. And so I help with that. Undergraduate research, again, that's something we're trying to grow even more, but I would argue there's as much undergraduate research in the College of Agriculture as anywhere on this campus. And again, we have students can submit proposals if they have an idea for a research project. Maybe they're in the honors program, want to do a research project, and they need $500 for materials for a project, or to travel to a scientific meeting or something like that we routinely provide, that sort of thing. College of Agriculture is known for competition teams, student organizations. So when students, you know, we're very proud, for example, to have a really strong chapter in what's called Manners. So that's minorities in agriculture, natural resources, related sciences. And we've had that for over 20 years. We've had an assistant dean for diversity in the College of Agriculture for over 20 years. Some of our peer institutions are just hiring the first person for that role in just in the last year or two. But that's something that we feel very strongly about. So that student organization, we help support them. We help support Ag Ambassadors, which, you know, is the recruitment team that helps the College of Agriculture and other student organizations. And then we've got a big project that I'll talk about here next in terms of an upgrade to Waters Hall, specifically for some spaces that have heavy student utilization, student club space, and so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in more detail. And Ag Student Council, which I'm one of the advisors for Ag Council, and the way Ag Council works, so that's basically every student organization in the college has a representative. And so that's how we assemble the Agriculture Student Council. And then the officers are elected the same time as GA offices are elected. They're also on the ballot for all the offices for Ag Student Council, but then the members of the Student Council, each student organization in the college selects their representative. And so we work with the council officers when they meet as an exec and talk about the fees in general. And then when we went through this idea of a renovation project, we actually had special meetings with the council where I presented the idea, said, take this back to your clubs, talk about it for a couple of weeks, we'll meet again. We didn't take a vote the first time we talked about it. They came back and voted for it, and actually voted unanimously to make an investment in upgrade to infrastructure. So I don't know how many of you have been to Waters Hall. You probably walked in front of it. You may or may not have been inside of it. A couple of you I know that because I've seen you there. But it's nostalgic, maybe is a nice way to put it. It's not one of the best buildings on campus. The ends were built, one end was built in the 1910s, the other in the 1920s. The part in the middle was built in the 1950s. And we have parents of prospective students come in and say, you know, it looks just like it did when I was in school. And it does, except maybe failing in some ways. But the middle part of Waters Hall is a conference room, and that is our main student recruitment space. If you came to K-State as a prospective student in the College of Agriculture, you likely met with me or Dean Court, assistant dean, or someone else, and Ag Ambassadors in this conference room. This is the first impression that students get when they come to K-State. And they come here knowing that we're one of the top colleges of agriculture in the country, and then we take them into a 1950s conference room with oak paneling, with water stains down the side, and steam heat. There have been days when I've hosted prospective students in a snowstorm with the windows open. Because if you don't open the window, there's no control of the steam heat. It is literally 85 degrees in there. That doesn't make a great impression on a 17-year-old that's thinking about where they want to go to college. And so Ethan Erickson put out a call and said, if you have ideas for maintenance, deferred maintenance, and can come up with a one-to-one match, the central administration would make an investment. And we said, hey, sign us up. But before we committed to that, I went to Ag Student Council and said, you know, this was coming off of COVID. We had not done study abroad. And so we've been able to reserve some fees, student travel had been curtailed. And so we had some funds built up in that account. And I said, you know, here's a chance to double your money and get 2 for 1 because even's good for the other half. And so we made this proposal and Ag Council considered it, took it back to the clubs and unanimously approved it. And then it was approved at the university as well. And so it's close to $1 million project and it is now finally underway. If you come over, yes, that they are starting to make some noise and there's some demolition going on. But it is now underway. We have a great contractor that's done work in Watersall before because there's been lots of need in other parts. But if you come in and the floor is going to change too. It's very nostalgic. This big terrazzo sunflower, very 1950s in there. But if you've been to Watersall and know there's a lot of this, the marble on the sides will, but this is kind of all oak and there's an old kitchenette that doesn't get much use. We're going to open it up and make it look modern. We're also going to skin out the hallways. And so the green tile, I wish I had a picture of the green tile. I should have brought that for you to just get the full Watersall experience. But that's going to be covered up. That's going to be framed out. New HVAC, which I think is probably the most important thing. You know, in that space, the steam heat is gone. In the offices where students support diversity programs, all that, not only did that have steam heat, it also had window air conditioning units. And, you know, there's been times when we've been meeting with prospective students in offices and do you want it to be loud or do you want it to be hot? I mean, that's your 2 choices. And so having modern connected to the chilled water, those sort of things. But this is just some of the architect's work in terms of what's up. This is looking out of the conference room and out to the main entrance of Waters. And so I think a much more favorable, you know, I say all the time, our facilities do not reflect the quality of the program. But sometimes, you know, first impressions matter. And so I think in terms of student success, better meeting space for student organizations and to grow enrollment. Because the value of your K-State degree 10 years from now is partially going to depend on the quality of the program that is happening 10 years from now. And we want to maintain and grow the reputation of this program, and so investment of facilities is needed. So the demolition part is underway. We've moved out. We're now doing our prospective students in the library in a very nice space until we have this space back. I'm up in the 2nd floor, but we're still maintaining access to hallways and bathrooms. And the document from Topeka says it will be completed in August of 2024. So I'm holding to it. Okay. So with that, happy to take any questions, comments, suggestions about anything with how these fees have been spent, and just welcome any feedback. So thanks for your attention.
Yeah, Jacob.
How much approximately does this team bring in an active?
Yeah, right at a little more than 850,000 is what the total, when you take our student credit hours over the fall, spring, and summer, it was 863 for the last year, something like that, when I ran it from the numbers in Power BI and doing that. I didn't check with financial systems as much as looking what our credit hours are and coming at that way, but that should be it.
Then how much of that is utilized per year?
Yeah, there's not a lot of, I mean, there have been, you know, like I was able to sometimes we save up for big projects, but a very high percentage of that probably, I would say in the departments, there's not a lot of balances built. That's something we try to keep on. And most of you don't know Geneva Yankee, but Ethan does. And she's the budget fiscal officer for the college. And that's one of the things she's really good at, working with the departments about making sure that we're not building up big balances and these sort of things. So generally that, you know, I mean, there are times when there's a, you know, they've got a project in mind and we're going to need to save a couple of years of that to do that. But a lot of this, you know, is going on to budget lines for people. And so their salaries, student salaries, for part-time work and those sort of things that are getting expended regularly.
Yeah, so you mentioned there being a potential fee increase. What would that look like just down the line? Do you have any projections?
We've thought about it a little bit in terms of what, you know, what our needs are, I think the biggest priority would be if we were to propose an increase in fees, it would be to invest it in people. That we are going to continue to build infrastructure, but a lot of that's going to be for charitable giving. And the foundation's been a great partner in fundraising, so we're not looking to spend a lot of fees. Now, I know at Oklahoma State, in the College of Agriculture, their fee is $87, and they're using it to pay off their new ag building. And that's our competition. We probably compete with them as much as any in terms of prospective students, both Kansas and outside of Kansas. But I think that a lot of it would be investing in people, trying to add faculty positions in order to, again, have more expertise, smaller class sizes, those sort of things.
Thanks.
And I don't have a number in mind. That it would probably, we've kicked around $40, going from 22 to potentially 40. That's, we need to run our numbers a little bit. We're not quite ready to commit to something quite yet in terms of what that might look like. Again, but we understand the cost of education, and I'm embarrassed to say how little I paid to go to Kansas State University compared to what you're paying now, and probably, a generation from now, you'll be embarrassed to say how little you paid. As hard as that is to believe at the time, I thought $600 for the semester was a lot. When I paid that my first semester, $665.65 for 12 or more hours. So I don't know what it looked like then, but that's always top of mind. I mean, we think about that. I'm a K-State parent too. Two graduates from this college in the College of Business, and so I've helped write the checks as well, and so I understand the cost of tuition and the cost of fees and housing. I know it's expensive. I know it's a good value proposition in the end. I know you'll make $1 million more in your lifetime having a college degree, and probably more than that having a K-State degree, but it's something we don't take lightly. And the fact that we've not raised it since 2014 is probably the only reason that we're even getting that consideration.
Great, thanks.
Do you have numbers on how much goes directly to undergraduate students for like running the farms, undergraduate research?
I don't have that number, but it's something I can sure get, that I can work with our budget office and we could get in terms of how much direct student support as opposed to staff positions and those sort of things. Yeah, that's something that I could get and get back for you.
Tangent to my next question. How many staff / GTA positions are dependent in some way or fully on?
Yeah, again, that would be something I'd have to pull up on the budget and see how many, I would say across the college, I'm guessing on the staff plus GTAs. And again, we have a lot of people that are funded 10% on fees, that it's not, we have very few people that are funded 100% on fees. But in terms of like total FTEs, it might be 5 or 6, but that might be spread across 25 people. But I can get the number of people and FTEs.
I can ask, how is the big budget? Is this 2% of your budget? Is this 10% of your budget?
Oh, I don't know, Ethan, I don't have my
Fee for your college.
Yeah, it's in terms of like our total, so our total budget in the college is,
I don't have that one memorized, sorry.
yeah, there's a little card that Geneva hands out.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the research.
Less than $1 million in terms of your overall state funding. I mean, you get 50 million just on the research.
Yeah, I mean, at least, I think the main campus funding, I want to say, is on the order of like 7 million.
Yeah.
I think that's right in the budget model. So, so less 10% of the teaching part of the budget, but again, over 50 million in research expenditures, plus the entire extension.
Right.
So, if you grew up wherever, if you grew up in Kansas and had a county extension agent, they're a K-State employee that's funded through the College of Agriculture, has been up to this point at least. So that's part of our budget too, but it would be easily less than 10% of just the teaching component of the College of Agriculture.
It's all in how you count the dollars.
Sure.
I mean, the research dollars come in sort of separately, and then there's the salaries that get paid, and then you've got the maintenance and so a lot of your money is spent before you even show up. And so this discretionary funding is critical to keeping those high value items going, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that, if we were in a point in time where we had to take a budget reduction because we didn't have this fee or we had an equivalent cut elsewhere, then the things that we would have to reduce would be, I think, a lot of the experiential learning sort of things, student trips to study abroad and perhaps student service positions over time, if there were attrition. Those are things we'd have to look at in terms of, do we consolidate that rather than having somebody in every department? Keep in mind too, we're spread across 7 buildings. It's not, we're not in one building. So part of the reason that we have, student support people all over is because we have people in every building. So regardless of whether you're a food science student in Call Hall, or whether you're a horticulture student in Throckmorton Hall, or a grade science student in Schellenberger Hall, there's someone in your building that is there to support you. And so that's also part of it as well. But if we face a significant cut, then we'd have to think about, do we need to centralize this a little bit more, and what does that do for, because if you're faced with walking across to another building in rain, you might just not do it, and then you miss out on the opportunity. I think student access is really important for us.
Just for clarity, any kind of fee proposal, that's probably not coming in by this year's November deadline.
Well, we're still having those kind of discussions about starting it in terms of that's something we'll have to decide in the next week or two. We've had some preliminary discussions in our college with the dean and with other members of our leadership team about, do we want to ask for something in this cycle or not? But that's to be determined.
And you haven't really talked to the provost yet?
No.
Yeah, so
that's a step one.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned there, you have how many students in the programs?
yeah, roughly in the College of Agriculture, graduate and undergraduate students, roughly 2,000.
A lot.
We'd like it to be more.
That's kind of,
Would you guys be able to handle like a significant amount of more student enrollment? Like you're talking about, renovations of these new buildings.
Mhm.
Are you guys going to be able to support that with the infrastructure that's currently there?
I think that we have infrastructure issues, but not necessarily capacity issues.
Okay.
Schellenberger Hall is not great if there's only 10 students. We have some places that are just worn out. But, in 2014, we had 2,500 students in the college. And every, that was kind of the high water mark for K-State's enrollment historically. And almost all departments, all colleges were mostly, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, bigger than they are now. But I think that now, if we had that sort of enrollment, then that would generate tuition revenue that we would then reinvest in more faculty lines to maintain. We've had a compression in the number of people in our college because of, with the enrollment decline, we've had retirements that we didn't fill back and those sort of things. But I think we have the physical capacity, we have the classrooms, we have the office spaces. If we were able to grow back to 2,500 students, and I would very much love to see that before I retire, that I think that we could handle that. And the industry would very much like that as well, that we would have jobs for all 2,500.
You'd have to go back faculty and such, but that variable in capacity is sure there.
Yeah, absolutely. The physical capacity is not the limiting factor because we did it now I remember it being a faculty member in 2012, 2013, 2014, where there were classes that we'd always offered 2 sections, spring and fall, but we started to add a 3rd section, spring and fall. And some of those have been maintained, some of those have been cut back, but that's all we're doing.
And we've shifted to online. And so the number of students in the classroom is percentage wise has decreased. So even though the total numbers is higher,
Yeah, I would say that, although I would say, we have a lot of students in fully online programs, but the Manhattan students typically in College of Agriculture are not taking a lot of online classes. They may be taking them outside of college. But we don't offer a lot of online experiences for Manhattan students. That largely that's, obviously for a period of time did, but that for the most part, College of Agriculture students are going to be taking classes. There's a few exceptions, but 95+, 98% plus of our student credit hours are in person for Manhattan students.
For our purview purposes, is it possible to get the 2014 fee presentation?
I don't know if I can try to find it 2014, yeah.
I reached out to both Blake and Nate, and neither of them have it. Dr. Lane said that he could probably get me that. So pending, yes.
Before my time, unfortunately. Dr. Boggs would have made that presentation.
Yeah.
He retired in 2020 and filled his position. But I remember that as a faculty member in animal science during that time, I remember having the discussions about that. And my recollection is that it was obviously we're not going to spend student fee dollars on things that aren't benefit students, but I think that that was the time when enrollment had grown dramatically and the budget approach was very different from what we have today, and where that more enrollment did not translate directly to more dollars, that it was more of what we call an incremental approach where, if the state gave us more money and there was more tuition brought up, and so there was, 3% more to have, then everybody just got 3% more of what they got last year. But some of our programs were growing more rapidly than others. Some colleges were growing more rapidly than others. And at that time, and I think the experiential learning has always been something that we've had in mind, that if you're going to have cows for students to work with, you got to feed them. And if you're going to have plants, you're going to have equipment to maintain, those kind of things. And we want our students to have experience with the best equipment, with the best food, with the best animals, so that when they go out in the industry, they know what to expect. And we don't, and that's, I think, was my recollection, at least, of the impetus behind the fee at the time. But yeah, I'll see if our team, if anybody else has that somewhere that we can track down. Yeah.
I'm looking, I see, I got it in my file, I'll check. It's not coming up.
Or it could be in your email too.
That's what I'm looking at.
I have the agendas from those meetings, but none of the presentations.
Gotcha.
I have the presentations from 2018, not the one from 2021.
And I would have the presentation from 2020 that I gave at that time, but I don't have anything in the files back of y'all that I found yet.
Probably had it on its own computer.
I wouldn't bet on that. Good questions.
Any other questions?
Awesome.
Okay, seeing none, Dr. Moser, thank you for coming to.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We will be back in here next week with the proposals. Since we're going to string the timeline up, we won't have Q&A period next week. But go ahead and send me and Kate any questions you might have. I took a couple of notes for Dr. Moser to look into. We'll send those over to him, and we'll have responses for you by the next meeting. Yeah, absolutely. With that, meeting adjourned.
You're from Cottonwood Hall? Yeah. Are you like Elmore South related? Is that you? No. It's so extremely. I don't think we actually thought of it. We're both even bizarre. Yeah. Let's see. Like that.
Somehow like that 8 hour, like I thought it's very low.
Yes, sure. No, it's not a.
It's because we're not really work on it.
I was just available. Yep.
I have to make up.
I get that all the time.
I was up the entire night.
I want